This is the Sabot Nationals debrief, and I could write a book on the Sabot Nationals, so I will try to keep it under 20 minutes or so. So this is the Sabot Nationals debrief. We were at Long Beach Yacht Club, and it was 3 days of racing. First day was flight selection, and then we had the championship over 2 days. And I'm really amazed that we can take 123 sailors from throughout Southern California, put them out there, and nobody has a complete meltdown. Obviously, sportsmanship was a little bit of a question the first couple days with the starting line. There were some people that were playing games with that, starting by setting up. They were playing a game where they were setting up super early intentionally and kind of sculling and doing all kinds of things and kind of laughing about it. So the regatta was a really good learning experience for all areas, and we're not there to mock anybody. It was several kids from several yacht clubs that were messing around in the starting sequence a little. And so, but still, again, 123 kids, and it's pretty amazing to see the quality of the boats up there throughout the fleet, and the sailing was quite high. It was a really good demonstration of our team. We had 26 kids. I had never had a team that big before, and it really took a lot of effort. All of our planning for months really paid off. So it was really good. I would say way above average. And comparing our results from last year to this year, there were several kids that moved up just an incredible amount. Mostly Zach Peterson moved up 67 places. Ronan 65 places, Maribel 57 places, Lorelei and someone else, Will Simpson or something, they were in the 39 range, so really good. A lot of people did a great job, and we had 8 kids doing their first nationals, Olive being her first nationals, and she got 10th overall on flight selection day, so that was just incredible. I don't think I've ever had somebody get a 10th on flight selection day in their first nationals. I think we followed the Nadapam thing quite well. Nothing disturbs our peace of mind. And that's basically trying to get, so nothing disturbs our peace of mind, and trying to get uncontrollable things to roll right off our back, trying to get ourselves into a mental focus where we're not distracted by a lot of things. We're just not getting disturbed by protests or race committee decisions or other drama going on. I think we did a good job of that. So that was one of our big team goals, and I really like that too. The racing was really tight from a standpoint of our race course here was really small in that bay, and we had the coaches zone down this side of the course as well with the coaches zone buoys. The course was very small. L2 was often very close to the start line, and so overall this course was more challenging for the outer loop, and this was W1 and this was L1. So again, we had a very small area to race in, a lot of challenges. I'm really amazed that everybody was to manage all the multiple rules that would come into play over and over and over again. The rules are complicated. I can't get into it too much here, but there's a couple things going on. If every protest got filed throughout a day, we would be at the yacht club until about 2 in the morning with protest hearings. And then we have to ask ourselves also, what's complicated about the rules, we have to ask ourselves, are we only filing a protest when somebody fouls us? What about when we foul them? Are we just ignoring it? I saw many times where people would foul, and then I would see them not just our kids, not just from San Diego. I'd see different kids from yacht clubs. They would file a protest, but I had seen them file before. This stuff is all complicated, don't get me wrong. But we have to think about these things when we're going to file protests. One of the best parts of the regatta, obviously, was the social side, the pool slide, the dancing on Saturday night. All of that stuff just added so much to the event. And I think overall, the biggest thing about overall in this regatta is that every kid on our team was there for everybody else too. The young kids were there, and we wanted them to enjoy their first time, and we wanted them to learn a lot and do that. But at the same time, we wanted our 13, 14, 15-year-olds or the older kids to have their chance to shine. Their goal setting over the last few years has been to do very well at Sabot Nationals, and everybody worked together, so everybody's goals were met. We got 11 kids in the Gold Fleet out of the 35, and we got 4 in the top 10 overall in the championship. So overall, I think it was just a really good event. At the regatta, we talked about WDG. You can see I use acronyms a lot. What did good? You always have to tell yourself what you did good at the same time as you're critiquing what you can improve on. Almost nobody broke a boat, okay? So that was really good. No breakdowns. That was a great thing. I mean, we had like 1 or 2 breakdowns. Everybody was able to incorporate the things that we talked about, like not tacking too much at the top end of the course where the wind was lighter wind because of the big homes right up on the beach there. Very few people got in the mess of tacking too much up here. Downwind, people were thinking about the current and whether they should go over here, and this is the current here. The current was very strong here. Whether to go like this to get to W2, whether to jibe to go in here. We talked to a few kids about doing what we called sailing around the outside, and a few kids did it. So, on that day that we talked about it. So that's one of the good things that you did, is that you tried to incorporate what you were being taught, and that was really a great part of the week. What else did you do good? I felt like everybody sailed upwind quite well. No one was really pinching too much. That VMG sailing that we talk about all the time, sailing as if no one else is out there, there's no buoys, you're just trying to sail at your maximum speed and angle at all times. I think that's something we did really good. Kind of excluding the chaos of the starting line, I would say that we did a good job of getting around the buoys cleanly, not fouling, not hitting buoys, not trying to cross people when we couldn't cross them. You did a really good job of sailing clean. That's what we mean by sailing clean. You're getting around the chaos very good, and around all the tight sailing. At the top of the course, everybody could still get better. Going into the finish lines up here, I noticed some people reaching a little bit. There was finish 1, and here was finish 2, and they were in lighter wind. And everybody did a good job. We could still get better at the top end of the course. But the best thing is we had very few crash roundings where you would have a bunch of boats coming into the mark, and here you are crashing in at the mark last second. I really was proud of everybody for that. You did that well. Staying out of trouble up there was pretty good. Very few of you did simultaneous tacks. So what we mean by simultaneous tacks would be something like this. Coming off the starting line, this boat tacks, and you immediately tack right as they tack, because this is going to turn into a situation where this boat pinches you off. So now there's 8 boats going this way. This boat pinches you off. You tack once, you lose 9 seconds. You go over here, you tack again, you lose 7 seconds. This boat now is not only ahead by 4 or 5 seconds, but now they're ahead by 20 because you had to do 2 extra tacks. Sabots are not a boat where you can tack next to people. And then also you guys did good at not doing the duck tacks where you're on port tack or something, a starboard tacker crosses you, and then you guys come right here and tack immediately. You did a good job of that because, again, you get pinched off, you end up tacking 2 more times, and in a sabot that kills you. The general rule of a sabot is you can't tack too much. The boat doesn't have a centerboard. The lee board isn't a pivoting device. It's a sideboard. It's not in the middle where the boat pivots. So tacking is more than twice as bad as tacking any other boat that you ever sail. So you did good at that. What you did good is you did no simo tacks. And you did no duck tacks, where you ducked and then tacked right away. You didn't do any duck tacks, so very good. You didn't do those. That was good. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that was the starting line. So it is an excuse to say that the race committee did not do something right. And we have to learn how to manage those things. So let's start talking about tactics and things. The race committee boat was very favored for the first 2 days, at least 1 3/4 days. And we knew that because every single boat was here. Very few boats were here at even 2 minutes. This was the game we were talking about. Kids were setting up here and playing a little game about how early they could set up. There's a line between having fun and being disrespectful. So if any of us was involved in that, we have to think back and think, did we cross the line of being disrespectful there? There were kids from a lot of yacht clubs playing this game. So anyway, the elephant in the room is that the starting line was extremely important the first 2 days. And on the third day, what happened was they decided to move the pin way, way up and make it that end favored. So then it became a sculling fest. The thing you have to understand about a Sabot is when you set up, it is almost impossible in a Sabot, because it goes sideways so much, it is almost impossible to miss a boat next to you. So in order to avoid collision, kids are sculling a lot. And it's a very challenging part of the rules. We have to do the very best we can to take the circumstances, make the best of it. So you should have set up early in these first 2 days with the boat favored. And when the pin end was favored, we should have set up here in the middle of the line, very close to the line at a minute 20. When the boat was favored, we had to set up over here at a minute 30. Some people were setting up earlier than that, but you did have to set up early. When the pin was favored and the current, see, that's the thing you guys don't know, the current was extremely strong at this end of the starting line. So if you set up here at 30 seconds, which some of you did, you ended up being here at 0 or at 5 seconds, even worse. So you needed to set up that way very close to the line when the pin was favored. Okay, so that was the elephant in the room, is that the starts were more than 60% of the race, and some of you really struggled. And we'll talk about goals here in just a little while. Holding position. We gotta, that's one of our goals, work on holding position as much as we possibly can. Making sure that we get in the proper body position, which is the Mickey Mouse position. One knee, your back knee is down on the floor and your right knee is on the thwart. Okay, so for starting, holding position was crucial. We talked about when the pin's favored, you have to stay closer to the line, and when the boat's favored, you can hang back a little. Mickey Mouse position, again, that's the back knee is on the floor and your front knee is on the thwart. You're not standing. Standing means you can't see the boats to leeward. When you're in the Mickey Mouse position, you can look under the boom, you can look behind you. You're not on your bottom in the pre-start. So we got to work on that, everybody. We've talked about it a lot. Now we got to move on to a theory here, or something that occurs, and I call it the picket fence. And this is why you have to set up so early in a Sabot. Again, 2 minutes was too early. Minute 20, minute 30. But when you get all these boats lined up, on the starting line or just behind the starting line, what happens is the wind comes down, and these boats, the wind comes down and it blows up over the mast. It's almost like a fence. All those masts and sails are almost like a fence. So it backs the wind up. So what you get is you get a little bubble in the wind of lighter wind in here, because these boats, as they're sitting there, they're stopping the wind. the drag of the fleet is quite amazing. The amount of drag those things create, it's almost like having a wall there. And so that backs it up. Then this wind comes along and it goes up over the top of you. So this picket fence occurrence is something we have to be aware of. This is why we're asking you guys to set up so close to the line. It sounds good to do the Vanderbilt approach, which is sail down for 30 seconds. At 1 minute you're here, and then you go for 20 seconds, and then you tack, and then you go full speed. You can never do that kind of a start in a one design fleet that's big. Because of the picket fence, because of the bad air. You have to be here at the start, because if you're here at the start, you're in less wind than that boat by a dramatic amount. We got to bust through the picket fence. We're truly racing 3-4 boat lengths off the line. Okay? That's when we finally get clear wind. So remember that. We have to push the line. We have to really push, because we got to get out of that zone as quick as possible. And one of our goals is to get the first 25 boat lengths. That's about the first minute, 1 minute first. Okay, so I'm going to draw a line here in orange. And every start, you should be thinking about from here to a position straight upwind, exactly about 1 minute straight upwind. Whoever gets to that spot first, whoever gets to that line first consistently are the people that win Sabot races. So remember that. You're thinking about the start, but your ultimate goal is to point as straight up the course as you can to get to this, what we call a ladder rung here. This is a line that's perpendicular to the wind about 1 minute after the start. Okay? So you got to remember that. That's what your goal is in starting, is to get to that spot here or here or here in the top group. And in Sabots, it's especially important because of the slow speed of the boat and how hard it is to accelerate the boat. Good. Acceleration was really good for some, and for others, acceleration was not good. We have to learn how to adjust the main sheet in the acceleration process. You can't just pull the main in and hold it. And that's something we're going to learn. Now let's talk about a specific tactic that I think people messed up, and that is, don't rush the tack. So the other elephant in the room is that this was a very easy tactical regatta. Don't rush your first tack unless you have to, after the start. There is no arguing that usually the boats that won were the boats that started and immediately went right. And the reason why it was so easy is because the current was coming in on the left most of each day at about 1.2. I'm going to just say 1.0 knots. Okay, so I'm going to say 1 knot exactly. And then there was a current line over here, a glassy streak. And then there was another glassy streak that would move back and forth. And as the day would go on, it would move more this way. But the current was going about 0.5 right here. And the current was actually going early, up until 2 o'clock every day, it was going the other way. So this was not a tactically hard event. My point is that if you start, your boat number 1 here, if you start, and this is a pretty good angle on starboard, and a few people tack, go just a little further before, if you're doing well on the boats to the left, go just a little further and just give yourself a little more of a lane here. The problem is that a lot of us would come off the line, and everybody had been talking about the right so hard that this boat would tack, and what would we do? Bam, at the same time, again, we're in the track. They pinch us off. We're now doing 2 more tacks, losing 14 seconds, and now all those 8 boats are further ahead. We couldn't do that. Sometimes, don't rush that first tack, especially if you come off the line and you're doing okay. I know it was a race to the right, but some of you guys rushed that first tack quite a bit. Okay, let's talk about upwind now. Upwind. Okay. I think everybody did a good job of listening and understanding that at the bottom of the course was usually windier, and as it got to the top of the course, it got lighter. So we talked about easing the Vang as we got to the top of course. We talked about easing the Cunningham as we got to the top of the course. Those were cues. The cues for that were having to sit in the middle of the boat more. So as you're having to move your body, more into here near the main sheet block, then the Cunningham's eased, the Vang's eased a little, and we do that. Down at the bottom of the course, we were on the rail, and maybe sitting by the rail, we had more Cunningham on, more Vang on. Okay? Little bit of Vang. Sabots are the least Vanged boat upwind that you'll ever sail. Lasers, obviously 420s, they all use a lot of Vang. J24s, Snipes. Sabots, no. But we do put Vang on upwind anytime we're near the rail. So shifting gears, changing your sail controls. Okay? So adjusting your sail controls, improved. And we, essentially this is what people call shifting gears. As it got lighter at the top of the course, things got eased a little. Not too much outhaul, but definitely Cunningham and Vang. As we were at the bottom of the course, if it was good wind, a little more Cunningham, a little more Vang, and we'd be adjusting those as we go. Adjusting your sail controls. I hope you can read this. Adjusting sail controls. I'll try to write a little neater here. We improved on that. Another thing was upwind, was you had to sail differently on this side of the course when you did the inner loop and the outer loop. The current was so strong over here that you actually had to change your angle to keep your speed up. The problem with current is that it's slowing you down so much that it takes longer to get to the mark. A lot of people think current is about deep water, shallow water. The fundamentals of current, when the current is going down the course, is it makes the upwind legs longer, therefore increasing your chances of losing, and it decreases your distance or time on the downwind legs, therefore decreasing your chances of losing. So upwind, you had to maintain speed. If you were pinching, which not many of you guys were, if your mainsail was too loose, which some of you guys were, especially the first day, you paid for it on the outer loop. When you were going from L2 to W2 or from L2 to the finish 2, you guys, if you struggled with pinching or sailing with your mainsail not in the right place, especially too loose, you really paid for it. Over here, you did not have to be as cautious. It was easier to sail on this course because the current was weaker. We could tell that because of the current line coming down the middle of the course, that glassy water. Everything to that side had less current. And up until 1:30, 2:30, and on the last day, 3 o'clock, the current was actually going back up the other way. Okay? So there you go. The current made a big factor. The thing about upwind was the wind was oscillating, and it was very certain that the wind shift would come back. When you were sailing in this regatta, you probably remember, you would get big lifts and it would always cave. Or you would get headers followed by big lifts. So the thing to do in oscillating winds, granted we had to protect the right pretty good, but in oscillating winds, you had to make sure that you were going up towards the beach. My general rule for the entire regatta, okay, so my general rule for the entire regatta was if I ever got a port tack lift, take all this out, if I was up here and I was going to W2 and I got a humongous lift like this, and it was, because there was times you were going towards East Los Angeles on port tack. You ever got a big port tack lift, you would go extremely fast on that, because if you, okay, so let's make you the green boat. Here you are, you're on a big lift, you're headed up the course on port. This is a good angle. And here's boat 4. Boat 4 stays extra high in the lift, and you just sail you sail fast in the lift, okay? So what's gonna happen then is you're gonna just get out in front just a little. You're gonna increase the separation a little bit. Yeah, this is still good. And then watch what happens when that oscillation occurs. It always occurred. Unless you were within 1 minute of the mark, or 30 seconds of a mark, the wind shifted always shifted back. Okay, so here we are lifted. This boat's pinching. This boat's sailing VMG perfectly. The wind shifts to the right. Watch the angle change. See that? There we go. And then you dig into it a little, you tack, and you just beat that boat. So the key to the whole regatta was finding a lifted port tack, and anytime you had one, you stayed on it. And that was the biggest thing. Anytime you were on starboard tack and lifted, you were almost footing in those because it always caved back down the other way. So again, if we're sailing in oscillating winds and we know the shift is always going to come back, we're pretty much playing speed when we're lifted, and we're playing pointing when we're headed. Okay, so I know that's a little complicated, but when we're headed, we accelerate and then we make sure we're right on the wind for the next lift. When we're lifted, we're sailing perfect speed, no pinching, no footing, full speed. Although I did say on starboard, I probably would have been footing at times to get to those next headers, but there we go. The shift always came. Okay, death zones. The death zones, there were death zones. I hope you can read this down here at the bottom. I'm not sure it's on the screen, but there were death zones. And the biggest death zone was over here. So if you got close to the coach's zone in the current, as soon as you came around this L2, if you tacked and you went over here, pretty much 90% of the time you would pay for that decision. Anything over here was a death zone. The current was extremely strong, ripping down this side of the course. On the last day, the death zones were over here on the right, next to the ramp where all the boats were, all the homes with their docks and all the power boats and everything. And the mark was up there. It was okay to come up here like that, but if you got over here too early, you would just absolutely park it. You would get in here and there was just this big glassy hole over there. On the last day, the death zone was getting too far over there. Normally in normally in Alamitos Bay, the death zone is below the start line. Right by the boats, Naples Island down there, all those docked boats down there, the wind hits those homes and bounces off and creates a picket fence. But they set the race committee so far away from Naples, we didn't have to worry about that death zone. That wasn't one. And the last thing about upwind is, let's do this one in orange. And I hope you can read this. I think it's on the screen there. Getting lee bowed is really bad. So when you're on starboard, you can yell starboard all day long. Getting lee bowed is B-A-D. Here you are, and you were sailing on this regatta, okay? And you're in the middle of the course, let's say, and you're on starboard. Let's switch these guys around. I'm always putting boat number 1 and the green boat as us. Here we go. We're coming along. What you should have done in this case, because you're on a lift, what you should have done in this case is said cross, not go. Do not say go. Okay, say cross, and you duck them and you stay on the lifted tack. There were many times, I wouldn't say many times, there were a few times for several of you where you would hold your starboard tack rights, and unfortunately you would be here, red boat wouldn't be crossing, red boat would tack right here, and then what would happen to you? Boom, headed towards East LA on a header. Okay, so when you call starboard on somebody, if they're almost crossing you, let them cross sometimes. You're usually on the tack you want to be on. You get lee bowed, super bad. Super bad. We talked about that. Okay, so now let's move on to the windward mark. Windward mark. This is the start and the windward mark are the two biggest impacts, other than pinching, or sailing too high on the wind. But at the windward mark is control Sabot races. This is where races are won and lost, and this is where races are won and lost. You would have noticed early in the day that people weren't hitting the mark. Then later in the day, people were hitting the windward mark, and that's because this current would slow down, but it would not stop. This current just kept coming in all day, over here on the left. But as we get into an hour from 45 minutes to an hour from the tide switching time. So let's look at the second day of the regatta. High tide was at 2:05 or 2:45. 2:45. That meant at 1:45 approximately, the current would start trickling out this way. Okay? The power plant that's sucking water in is back here, and it's sucking water to cool the power plant. It's sucking water in, and it kind of goes, and it starts to get stronger and stronger. So as we got into the later races, you would start seeing this. Bam! And then this guy would go around. Then there would be another boat hit the buoy. One thing about current is when you notice people hitting the buoy, that means the current has changed. Okay, so at the windward mark, account for the current. That was a big factor. And later in the day, you had to sail 2 or 3 seconds longer. Okay? Later in the day, when you were on port tack, you had to sail right on the wind, close hauled, and you had to get to the ley line and then go 1, 2, 3, and then tack. You'd had to give yourself 2 or 3 extra seconds past it. So you had to overstand by a fraction. That was another thing we did good. I saw very few people overstand. That is a good, so WDG, remember that. What did good? And few overstands. That was really good. I'd forgotten about that one. We really got better at that over the last few months. Not going all the way out over there and then tacking and all that extra distance. Okay? You got to remember, if this is the ley line, and you go, every second that you go past that ley line is 100% loss. So you should be able to understand that. Every second you go past there, you're losing 1 second to everybody else who is sailing what we call VMG angle. Anybody else is doing their 2.3 knots or whatever we're doing, 1.9 knots probably over the bottom with the current. Anybody who's going 1.9 knots is gaining 1 second on us every second that we go past the ley line, okay? It's really a bad loss, so remember that. Windward mark, you gotta account for the current. Later in the day, we needed to be aware that the current was pushing us downwind. Yeah, as the day went on, you probably noticed that people were struggling to get around the mark. That's a sign that the current is increasing or changing in a bad way, okay? I think everybody did a good job on this, but staying on the wind as you get to the ley line, staying on wind as you get to ley line. On day 1, I noticed a few people who would be going along here, and the wind would get lighter, remember? It would get lighter, and because you wanted to have more feel in your boat, you would turn down. And then you would turn down. And then all of a sudden, you're toward, again, East Los Angeles is over here, and you're heading over there. And then in a Sabot, you do 120-degree tack and park it. Close your eyes. Did this happen to anybody? It probably happened to a lot of the younger kids. And then all of a sudden, you're going back this way. You've got to stay VMG, whatever your speed testing you've done, any practice you've done of speed upwind, you have to concentrate. You got to fly your tilt-tilts, feel the boat, make it move. And if the sail doesn't luff, don't turn down. That's the first lesson. But keep going. Stay right on the wind. 1, 2, 3. Boom. Big roll tack. and you go right around the mark. A perfect roll tack, but stay on the wind as you get to that lay line, okay? Don't go reaching off way off that way before your tack looking for speed or power. Only turn down if the sail luffs. And unfortunately, sometimes your sail luffs because somebody just sailed past you, right? They blocked your wind. All of a sudden you're here, this boat goes here, you get right here, your sail's gonna luff for a second because they blocked your wind, and some of us on the first day especially would go like that as it would luff, and then again, big tack, this boat goes around and whoa, boom, there we go. That should make sense to us. Now this is a complicated tactic. It's called the delayed duck. We've talked about it a lot. And we do it in the middle of the course, but I'm going to show you at the windward mark what that is. Okay? So here we are, and we are on port tack, and we have a bunch of starboard tackers there, and we have no way to get in there. Okay? It works better in heavier boats because we can keep some momentum. A Sabot, if we stop it, completely slows us down. But anyway, you do not want to do this and duck this boat back here, because now you've got a harder lay line call and you're 9 feet behind boat 4. His bow is there, your bow is here when you duck them. You are the same distance as if when you're here, you see these boats coming, what do? You delay. You let your sail out and you coast straight, or you do what you have to. Sometimes you might have to go head to wind if it's late enough. You slow down. You let this boat go forward. You let this boat go forward. You let this boat go forward. And then you re-accelerate and you duck 4 here. You're still 9 feet behind 4. Doesn't matter where you duck them. If you duck them here, you're 36 feet from the buoy or whatever, and you're 9 feet behind 4. Now, by doing the delayed duck, you're 9 feet behind 4, who was sailing a VMG angle, and you're only 15 feet from the mark. I hope that makes sense. It's called a delayed duck. You're on port tack, you slow down, you let this boat go forward, you duck them later than you would have, you're closer to the mark, so it's an easier lay line call, and you're not ducking them 36 feet from the mark. Remember, they're sailing full speed, you're only going to be 9 feet behind them here, okay? Now let's look at the same scenario in the middle of the race. This might have happened to you. You have a starboard tacker coming at you, you are here, and you have another boat that's to leeward of you. You do a delayed duck move. So here we go. You slow down by heading up and letting your sail out. This boat turns down and ducks. And right as we get here, we turn back down and accelerate. This boat ducks here and goes there. Then we accelerate. Whoa. Do you see what we just did? We started in this position and we ended up in this position. You see the difference, the gap that you got? So again, we can pull this off in heavier boats a little bit easier because we can kind of keep coasting, and then we can get around people and re-accelerate on like a close reach or a beam reach. So delayed duck move was really important to practice, you guys. Okay, and that's an advanced tactic that we're trying to learn. So let's talk about leeward mark quickly. Leeward mark was really only a problem here, and it was related to the current. And here you are. This is what would happen because of the current. L2 is where we had the problem. And that was, the current was so strong that you guys would come in here a little bit too tight, and with the current, you would go, whoa, and then start going. So your course would be like that. So what you had to do, actually, is you had to come out a little, and then you had to turn early. You had to actually point your bow at the mark so that you would come like this, you would swing out a little, and then you would actually aim at the mark as you went. You got to practice it. Whoa, you see the difference? You have to turn into the mark because the current was going that way. And people would do this Tokyo drift thing. They would heel their boat way over and they would cut the buoy too close and they would end up here. And it would be better that when the current is strong, you got to account for the current before the leeward mark, and you got to be turning upwind as you're going around. The other problem you guys had is you had your sail like this sometimes, and you're still going downwind. Right now your sail should have been there. And then as you come around, trim it in halfway now, and then all the way in as you come by here. You guys were getting ahead of yourselves. You were trimming too early on your sails. You were thinking ahead too much. Okay, so let's look at the leeward mark. You got to account for the current. Same thing we talked about. You got to account for current. Again, I'm trying to train you to be a good sailor in life, and when you travel, you're going to deal with real current, right? San Diego is a bubble. We have like the most current we ever get is 0.6 or something crazy simple. You go to Long Beach, Newport, it's a lot more. You go to the East Coast, it's 10 times more. So not 10 times, but it's bad. I'm trying to train you for that, for the future. And the other thing about the leeward mark is we needed to communicate earlier. Every single person who told me they got fouled at the leeward mark, and even the ones I witnessed, again, we've got to be, here we are, and let's see, 3 boat lengths from the mark is 1, 2, 3. Here's 3 boat lengths. It's a little big. And when we're here, boat 4 is here, and we are here. We need to look back and say, hey, no overlap. And what are they going to say to you? Oh, we're not at 3 boat lengths for it. Oh, that's okay. No overlap. And then we go like this, and we turn like that. We say, hey, you're not going to have room. Thank you. You guys would wait until you get here, and then all of a sudden you're yelling at the guy, no room. You know, it's pretty darn close, man. I mean, it's really close. You can't be waiting until the last second. So we got to communicate earlier our expectations. And we have to start talking to people earlier about situations. And this is going to come. And it's not yelling. It's just clear communication. No overlap. Hey, we're not at 3 boat lengths. That's what they say. And then you say back, I know that. Okay, I'm at 3 boat lengths. No room. You put your arm out. No room. And you say it loud enough for everybody to hear. And then that boat crashes into you. No room. Crashes into you. You go around. Hey, Joe, will you witness? You heard me say no room. Yeah, I'll witness. You know, you just got to do that. You say protest, obviously, because you have to do that to give them a chance to do their penalty turn. You always say protest on somebody who fouls you. You got to give them a chance to do their penalties. But then the next thing is you had to get a witness a couple times. Okay? So let's talk about improvements. Okay, improvements. Starting skill. Knowing exactly where the starting line is. I'm going to say the gold fleeters we had knew where the starting line is. I'm going to say that our first year sailors, especially with the current being so strong, what would happen to some of our first year sailors is they would get down here at 30 or 40 seconds and the current would be drifting us sideways, and then watch what would happen. They didn't know this really, but they would start going like this, and that would luff their sail. They would be above close hauled and they wouldn't know it, so then they would just keep going and they wouldn't even come close to the pin. With the current, you had to keep sailing slowly, stop, speed up, oh, stop, speed up, and then get going and accelerate. But there were times where you needed to point down like this. On the last day especially, come over here, tack, and do a delayed duck and just wait for it to clear out and then go. Okay, but some of us were just going, whoa, on the first day because, again, there were big palm trees right off to the side of the race course. Yeah, palm trees. And you had to go over here before the race and you had to line up the starting line with something. Okay? Here we go. Line it up with something. At 30 seconds, you should have been up. You should have been up here. And you're looking at your line sight, and you're just below the line. Oh, I'm going to give you another trick. Okay? And this was not reliable for every start, but it was for several. Big guy in the pin boat. There would be a person looking right down the line at the start. And when you were here, the big person would be behind the pin, would be behind it. See, you're looking. And then you'd come up here, dot, dot, dot. Now they're still behind the pin, but it's closer. This was your line sight, the big guy standing on the pin boat. Another trick. You guys have to work on knowing where the line is, especially our younger team. I know that sounds simple. I know near the line sounds simple, but we are still struggling with near the line. Do you remember the picket fence thing? You've got to be here and not here because of the bubble the fleet creates when there's 40 boats starting all at the same time. If you're here, you're not near the line. You are 1, 2, 3, 4 boat lengths from the line. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're only 2 boat lengths from the line this way, but this way, so you needed to be up here at 30, not down here. So near the line, use that guy as your line sight. So improvements, near the line, and using line sights. Line sights are important for 2 reasons. One is after general recalls, you can see if they've changed the line. The other reason why you have line sights is when there's a U flag up, which happened a lot, people hang back more. So line sights work better because you can see them now. In the first starts with general recalls, everybody's so far up you can't see the line sight. In U flag starts, you could see line sights easy. Okay, holding position takes lots of practice. Holding position. These are the things we need to improve on. You gotta work on the Mickey Mouse position. You gotta work on how to steer the boat with your mainsail. How to stop your boat and get it moving again. Okay? Acceleration. We gotta get better at acceleration. And the key to acceleration is close reaching. So here's the wind. Some of you would go immediately close hauled to accelerate. And the problem with that is the wind fights you if you're close hauled. Some of you went above close hauled. Some of you guys pushed the tiller to leeward even though you were already above close hauled. The best ones were the people that would let their boat, just before accelerating, they would let their boat drift down with the sail kind of loose, drift down to about a close reach. Then they'd put the tiller in the middle, start trimming, and do 1 heel and 1 flatten, and go straight, and then head up. So an acceleration would be down to a close reach, 1 rock, and then go close hauled. Some of you guys would just go close hauled right away. So your VMG speed would never get created. You would never get flow over your lee board. This boat that did the proper foot off, heel and flatten would get flow over the boards quicker and would get to that mystical 1 minute upwind of the line thing that we talked about. Okay? Acceleration, super important. Okay? We need to do more speed testing. So I need you guys to start really paying attention when I'm teaching you about speed testing, because this is one area we have not done well. I really struggle with getting us lined up, and we're not always speed testing in practice, but we've got to incorporate it because you have to learn to sail the boat by the seat of your pants a little. There's knowledge about the VMG angle, how to steer the boat and all this, but there's a certain level of feel and what the boat's supposed to do and what I'm supposed to feel when I know I'm up to speed. It's just upwind and downwind speed testing. So I would go out with 2 friends. Here you are. I would get 4 boat lengths apart, 3 boat lengths apart, and I would line up the bow of us with the middle of them, and I would set there. And then my buddy would be lined up with the middle of my boat, 3 boat lengths to windward. We vary this a little depending on the type of boat. But on a Sabot, we set quite far forward, okay? And then we say go, and we start accelerating and we go. And then somebody gains, we set up exactly the same way again, and we go. And then we get on port tack, and we set up again. And then we get on starboard, and we set up again. And after about 8 of them, in between every one of those speed tests we talk, but after about 8 of them, we change one boat a lot. I mean, we take the slowest boat and we change their rake and their leeboard angle and their outhaul, whatever we can, their technique, their tension on their mainsail. We will change the slowest boat and then we'll go do it again. Repetition is one of the least funnest parts of getting good at any sport or any skill. Playing the piano, repetition, mixed martial arts, taekwondo, basketball, repetition is how you're going to get good. And that's the most boring part of training for a sport or a skill. But we got to do better at it. Speed testing. Okay? Speed testing. Keep working on sail control adjustments, mode changes, and sail adjustments. The Cunningham, the Vang, the outhaul. And the mode adjustments here again. Okay? So mode adjustments mean, are we in a VMG mode, meaning are we sailing our boat just as fast as we can based on no buoys, no other boats around? We're just sailing as fast as we can. If we sail a little pressed, meaning here's the wind, if we sail a little bit lower than that, it's called pressed or pressing. Okay? Or do we sail a little higher than that? Sometimes if we know there's a big lift coming, we see a huge lift coming, we'll actually sail a tiny bit too high as we go into a lift to reduce the gap between those boats and us. And it's called squeezing. So are we in press mode or are we in squeeze mode? Okay, so those are the mode changes that we need to learn. We use them in all boats. Okay, that's pretty advanced stuff. What else do we need improvements on? We need improvements on shy ley lines. Okay? You should never be practicing getting to the starboard tack ley line early. Every day you practice, you should be skipping the going all the way to the right corner and tacking early on the ley line. When you're in practice, you should be doing things like this over and over again. Here we go. Get a little header, tack, go under the ley line. Oh, we got lifted. Okay. Tack, tack, and go around. This is the ley line, and anything this side of it is called shy. Okay. And you got to practice shy ley lines. Come in here, and tack. But getting to ley lines early is really bad. A lot of you guys learned that, right? This boat on the early ley line would, 1, get tacked on by somebody else, or 2, the wind would shift and these boats would all come in on a huge lift at the end and pass you. Okay? These boats would get a huge lift at the end and you're all the way on the right. So you gotta practice shy ley lines this for all the time. Just keep doing it over and over. Because in a Sabot, it's a really scary position to be in, especially if you're in the middle of the fleet and there's a lot of bad air. Okay, but you gotta practice it. Sometimes you go to ley line, sometimes you do shy ley line. Practice it over and over so you can learn both. Very good. Wow, lots here. Tacking, again, people are rolling too early. So I won't write much on tacking, but we gotta improve our tacking. So the Sabot is very tack dependent. If you do 9 tacks and somebody else does 5, you're in trouble, unless it's very shifty. You got to try to do 4, 5, 6 tacks max. You got to tack really well. We do drills where we count our tacks so that we can start to get good at minimizing our tacks and Sabots because they tack so poorly. And then jibing, we've got to improve on our jibing, not oversteering. Okay, so our jibes are a little bit like this. We're going downwind. We start the jibe and we turn all the way to here and then the boom goes across. What you have to do on a jibe is you have to start turning and trimming all at the same time. You turn, trim, 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 and you roll the boat so that the boom goes across and you're still pointed down the course. So let's look at a good course. A good jibe is going to be, okay, so here we go. A good jibe is going to be straight, trim, turn, the boom goes across, and then you come back this way. Okay, a bad jibe is going to be not trimming the sail. You're going to have to turn all the way to here to get the boom to blow across, and then you come back down. This is the bad jibe I'm talking about. We got to work on turning the boat, trimming, rolling the boat to get the boom across, and then straightening it out sooner on this green course. Okay, so jibing. Where did I write that one? Gosh, it's a mess up here. Oh, I didn't write jibing yet. Jibing, tacking, jibing. So you can see we've got plenty of things to improve on. We're getting there. I don't know how long this has been so far. I'm sorry. Goals. Goals, goals, goals. Okay, goals. Our goals are to get, over the next 6 months, 30 to 40 seconds per race faster. So we had 25 to 30 minute races. Most of you lost those 30 seconds in the first 4 minutes, 3 minutes of each race. Most of you. You lost that. So that's a goal. We got to start better. We got to get upwind quicker in that first minute. Had you all sailed 30 or 40 seconds faster a race, you would have all finished 5 or 6 places better than you did. So if you got 10th in the regatta and you sailed 30 or 40 seconds a race faster, you would have saved 15 points during the regatta and you would have moved up dramatically. So that's really important to remember. Our goals are to remember that we need to just set our goals to be that much faster every race. If we do tacks a little better, jibes a little better, starting better, we round marks a little better, we're gonna find those 30 or 40 seconds and all of a sudden we're smiling. We feel much better about our regatta. I hate to tell you it's such a small margin of error. In a 30-minute race, had you guys finished 30 seconds better per race, you would have come out of the regatta smiling a lot more. Okay? Comeback ability. Comeback ability. This is really good. I think that everybody's body language was really good even when you weren't having good races. But our goal as a team is to remember that if we can pass 15 boats over 6 races, that's going to put us up again another 5 or 6 places over where we did finish. Maybe 4, but it's going to move us up a lot. In this Nationals, go back and look at the results. Take out one of those 18th places and put a 3rd in there and look at what your place would have been. Okay? So take out your second worst score, not your throwout. Take out your second worst score, turn that into a 3rd, and count the points. You'll be surprised at how far up you would have moved overall. Okay, goals. Improve light wind. Again, our light wind sailing is struggling. So we got to improve. Our goals are to get better in light wind. Some of you just don't concentrate on the telltales quite as much. We don't stare at the telltales all day long, but you got to look at them a lot more when it's light air. You've got to sail the boat against the wind and less against everybody else when it's light wind. You got to sail the boat more when it's light wind. You got to worry about other people less. And obviously we need to improve our understanding of the racing rules. We haven't been able to cover rules enough. We got to have patience to sit in that classroom and listen. But we do need to get on some. You should get the Racing Rules of Sailing app. It's free. Go to the App Store, look up Racing Rules of Sailing, US Sailing, and click on it and start going through that. But get that app. Parents too. Get that app going. The rules are complicated, especially when you're sailing in a course that's too small, the venue's too small, and you have 123 boats Racing. Okay, for next year. Oh God, this has gone on a long time. I'm getting tired over here. On flight selection day, no alphabet scores. No OCSs, no DNFs, no DSQs, no U flags. You really got to not get any alphabet scores. And if you do get one, you're going to have to be very cautious after that, okay? So we learned this year that you should go to your coaches after every race and ask them, hey, the U flag was up and they said boats were over early. Was I one of them? Because you got to know. You really got to know. Even though it's going to hurt your feelings if you had a good race that race, you really got to know. Okay, no alphabet scores next year on flight selection day, especially. On practice day, we got to practice starting a little better. Some people were talking, playing around, joking around, and then the next day everybody's blaming the race committee for our bad starts. Yes, the boat was way too favored. It made the starts completely difficult, considering the boat was favored and the right side of the course was favored by a lot, and the coaches are yelling at all you guys, don't give up the right. But we definitely need to do more aggressive practice starts the day before Nationals. Obviously all year, but definitely. Now this is a really important one. And that is, anytime you're in the top 5, you do not fight with each other. And this is especially true when you're in the top 3. What you do is, if you're in the top 5 in any Nationals race, you don't try to pass the boats ahead right away. You try to help everybody get away from 6th and 7th and 8th. You do not want to mess with anybody and have 6th, 7th, 8th gain on you. If you're in the top 3, it's especially true. I mean, if you're in the top 3, you're actually talking to the other boats and saying, hey guys, let's not sit in each other, okay? Let's get way ahead, and then we can fight later. But get away from 4th place, get away from 5th place, gain on 6th place. So this is a weird strategy that a lot of people don't quite subscribe to. But again, go to your scores for Sabot Nationals, take out your second worst score, put a 2nd or a 3rd in there, and you'll see you gotta get 3 top 5 finishes. If you get 3 top 5 finishes, your results are gonna be so much better almost regardless of your other scores. Okay, so let's remember that. When we're in the top, do not fight. Do not fight. Anything in the top 3 is just like a first. You should consider yourself you got first if you get top 3, okay? And anything in the top 5 is the keepers that you need. So let's remember that, okay? And then hunt down your coaches for Nationals next year. Hunt down your coaches better. You know, we don't have a good venue to watch from. We are very far away from the races. We do our best, but hunt them down, because we may just see 1 or 2 things that give you that 15 points, right? That you needed. If you got 9th in Bronze Fleet, if you'd have saved 15 points, you would have got 3rd or 4th. So again, come to your coaches. Make sure you ask us, because we do see a lot of stuff. We can fix 2 or 3 things, 1 or 2 things. All of a sudden, you got that good race you needed. So, well, very good. I know that was pretty long. If you have questions, email me right away, and take some notes. Make sure you write down on a piece of paper what you think you did good at Nationals, what you could improve on. This should help you a little bit, and then just write me questions. Thank you, guys, and looking forward to the Fall Gold Cup in a couple weeks.